Well, welcome everybody. We got a really special program today. As a matter of fact, if you can see from my background, I'm actually in my car. I'm traveling, and we had an opportunity to interview Scott Mann. And for those of you who don't know who Scott is, he's a gentleman that helped with the rescue of the Americans in Afghanistan, one of the retired military folks that did that for us. And Scott, I am so honored to have you on today. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
Well, sometimes, this is a planning show, a financial planning show. And sometimes people ask me, well, why would you have someone on to talk about a military operation? And no matter what you're planning, it's all about teamwork and working out all the contingencies to get the best results. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's a universal singular to that really doesn't matter what your discipline is. That's a reality of leadership that is going to have to be done every time.
And, I just listened to an audio book on my way down here where I am now called Extreme Leadership by some ex-Navy SEALs. And I think it really helped prepare me probably for talking about some of the things you're going to be talking about. And it's just amazing the things that you have to think about, especially in a totally dynamic situation. How do you even begin to prepare for a mission like that?
Well, I mean, it's all training, just like anything else in life that's high performance in nature, it's all your relationship to practice, right? So you build your skill, you build your competency when risk is low, and you leverage it when risk is high. And for those veterans who stepped into the breach when Afghanistan fell and the government chose not to get involved, it was 20 years for many of us operating in that country, 10 years, 15 years, tremendous amount of experience. And we did it all remote. No one from our team deployed. We used our networks, our knowledge of the country, and our relationships to get it done. And really, once again, I think that's true in any crisis, whether it's COVID, a market crash, or the crash of a country.
So how do you, I got to imagine it was so much more difficult when you didn't have the support of our own government. And we could talk for hours just about that situation. Yep. But how do you go about even starting that without even having that kind of support?
Well, I mean, Green Berets are really taught to, as are really all special operators, but I think Green Berets maybe more than most because of the fact that we go into indigenous places and we get surrounded by the enemy on purpose. We stay for months, years at a time. And so, there's a certain level of autonomy that I've certainly developed as a human, as a leader, that in this day and age, I think it's good for all of us, whether we are financial advisors or whether we're business owners. The ability to look at the arena that you work in and say, you know what, I don't think anybody else is coming. I don't think that the people who once led and performed a certain role, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that they're coming. And I learned to make that statement to myself long ago. Other people like Bo Eason, storytellers have said this, but I think it's important for us today is to recognize in our arena, nobody's coming. If there's a problem in the arena, if there's a challenge, a complexity that needs to be dealt with, it's going to be us that deals with it. And if we wait for some, knight on a white horse to come riding over the mountain, it's probably not going to happen.
So how did this mission begin? I mean, did you reach out to some folks or did some folks reach out to you? Because to me, it was just amazing that in such a short period of time, you were able to put this together and execute.
No, actually, I've been trying to put this war behind me for, almost a decade. I retired nearly 10 years ago. My son is now in the Army. I mean, it's his fight now, and I've, writing the play, which has become a film, and writing books on the war and speaking from the stage has been my way to make peace with a lot of loss, a lot of guilt, a lot of pain that came from war, this war in particular. And so when Afghanistan fell, Jim, and it was actually a friend of mine who was still stuck in that country named Nizam. And he contacted me and said, Herat has fallen. The next day I got a text, Kandahar has fallen. And he was a former commando, so he was a special operator who I had recruited, trained, served in combat with. And he was like a brother to me. He's more like a son to me. And he was hiding in his uncle's house in Kabul, like Anne Frank. And at some point, as the Taliban took over the city, he contacted me and he said, brother, I'm not afraid to die. Just don't let me die alone. And that really hit me in a very big way. And I realized that as much as I didn't want to get involved in all that again, I didn't want to feel that pain again, because here's the thing, Jim, I've led a lot of missions. I've commanded and controlled missions, coordinated missions. And every time you draw a sketch like the one behind me, a course of action sketch, and you start maneuvering people and doing those, people die. That's been my experience every single time. Sometimes it was the bad guys. Sometimes it was the good guys. Sometimes it was people that were never meant to die, but always on my watch. Every time I commanded a mission or led a mission, people died. And I frankly enjoyed the last 9 years of that not happening whenever I took on a project. And so all that was running through my mind was, this is a kid who I basically trained and led in combat and have become very close to, 53 years old. Is this going to be the last one to die on my watch? And it sucked, man. I'll be honest with you. I didn't want to get into it, but I knew that I had the skill set, the experience for it. I knew that nobody else was coming, and I had the network that could help him. And that's what we did. And from there, once we got him out, it just grew into hundreds, but the reluctance never diminished.
Wow. So what was your starting point then? So you made a decision that this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
So what kind of team did you have to coordinate?
Well, you know what I'll do? This is kind of dynamic, but I'll show you. So I came into my office. I was very angry because I didn't want to be doing this, but I knew that, I had been tapped on the shoulder. And a lot of times for us as leaders, we get tapped on the shoulder and it's not what we choose, but it's what the universe chooses for us. And we can either answer that tap or not. And in this case, if I didn't, I really felt like Nizam was going to die. So I put together this diagram on the whiteboard there. And in the center is Nizam. And then on the periphery are all of the individuals that I started reaching out to. I reached out to 2 other Green Berets who were on active duty, who had worked with Nizam, and they were gonna need, he was gonna need their leadership because we would have to work in shifts. I reached out to ABC reporter James Meek, who had a friendship with Nizam as well. And James has been working as a journalist in Afghanistan. So he has all of these other connections that I don't have. I was looking for diversity, right? I didn't want groupthink. I wanted a diverse, eclectic island of misfit toys that could come together with these vast relationships. Because what we were looking at, and the final person I got was a female, and it was a staffer to Congressman Mike Waltz, who was a former Green Beret, who I'd served with in Afghanistan and who was now on Capitol Hill. And I needed somebody that could swing a policy stick on his behalf. And so I called those people. They all agreed because we all love Nizam. And then I drew this sketch that you see behind me. And what I would just tell you about this sketch that you're looking at is what it entails is the entire scheme of maneuver to get him out. He was in a safe house, in his uncle's safe house on the other side of the city from the airport. He was not from Kabul. He wasn't familiar with the city. He didn't speak the language of the Taliban. The Taliban speak Pashto. He speaks Dari. He was an Uzbek, right? So just ethnically, he's hated by the Taliban. His father was a soldier killed by the Russians. Nizam was a commando. The Taliban hate the commandos. They fear them more than anybody. And if he was compromised, he'd be shot on sight. So how do you move a Dari-speaking Uzbek commando through a city infested with Taliban who speak a different language? So what we had to do was I diagrammed this out. Every piece of red text that you see on that board indicates a strategic problem. Usually on a mission, you have 2 to 3 strategic problems. We had 9.
Wow.
So selecting our team around relevance to the problem was essential, but moving him through the city was the hardest thing. And we did that by employing a taxi driver who I'd worked with years past who spoke Pashto and who could put Nizam in the back and move him as a client without him having to speak. And then we got him in proximity of the airfield where 30,000 people were gathering, and most of them not qualified to leave the country on visa. And that was a whole different thing. Then the other members of the team started taking shifts and helping him. We would drop pins on our phones of where checkpoints were, and he would move around those checkpoints. And finally, he got within 4 feet of the perimeter, 4 feet. He had elbowed his way. 2 people had been crushed to death as he did it. He calls her, he's on Signal chat, and we're all monitoring Signal, which is an encrypted app, kind of like WhatsApp, but encrypted. And he said, I'm within 4 feet of the gate, but they won't let me in and my phone's about to die. And so we knew if we lost his phone signal, he was done. We would lose community. His lifeline was gone. So we kept asking him to hand the phone to the Marines, and the Marines wouldn't take the phones. They kept pointing their weapons at him because they didn't recognize him as a commando. He was in disguise. And so finally, James Meek, the ABC reporter, made one more phone call to a friend out of desperation to see if he knew anybody inside the airfield. And it turned out they did. And get this, it was a former Green Beret who was now a diplomat working inside the airfield. He heard that we had a commando outside. He understood the gravity of the situation. So he told James, have Nizam say pineapple. I've passed that code word to the guards. They'll let him in. So we're screaming, say pineapple. And he does, and he gets pulled in. And
Wow.
At that point, the pineapple memes started flying. And we were like, well, I guess we know what we're going to call ourselves. And Task Force Pineapple and the Pineapple Express was born. That became the group of volunteers that then started getting more out of the country.
So did you have, I mean, obviously the government didn't back you, but they also didn't stop you, right?
Yeah, it was really weird. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen. I kept telling my wife, like, what planet am I on? Because normally you have elite special operations forces who do these kinds of missions, and they weren't there. They just weren't present. They had been disallowed from participating in this in any way. And so I just kept thinking, well, surely somebody's going to come. And then finally I just said, you know what? Hell with it. Nobody's coming. We're just going to do it. We've already got one out. Let's get more. And so we opened up the Signal chat room, and we brought in Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Marines, USAID civilians, reporters. Everybody was shepherding somebody. And we just started basically scaling up what we had just done. Again, I think another universal lesson here is you start small, you find what works, and then you scale. And that's what we did. We simply took the same approach that we did with Nizam. And our value proposition here, Jim, was that what we had that was different. So here's the ultimate dilemma. In a sea of 30,000 people, how do you present responsibly a vetted individual, right, who can go through the wire and not represent a threat to the United States? Well, we knew who these people were. We knew where they were, and they trusted us to help them move. So that was the key, was that we had communications on the inside. We had communications with them on the outside, and then we could move them as their eyes and ears around the perimeter and find the gates that were open. And then they would show a pineapple on their phone, which meant they were vetted, and then they could get pulled through.
Boy, that's just amazing. So all in, how many people were part of the operation?
It started with about 5, and it grew to around 150 within a matter of hours.
Wow. That's just amazing.
Yeah.
And how many people totally were you able to successfully get out?
Well, it's kind of hard. It was hard to keep account, but by our estimates, we estimate around 700 before the airfield bomb went off by ISIS. And then after that, we've managed to help get out several hundred more through various other groups. And so we're thinking somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200. But for all those that we helped, tens of thousands of more remain behind. And winter is coming, and the Taliban is hunting these people, particularly our Afghan special operations partners. So we're now forming a 501c3 that's going to continue this humanitarian aid for the long haul. And again, I would point out another lesson here. is that 150 people came together from different cultures, races, ethnicities, political beliefs, with one singular focus, which was to honor a promise. And that singular focus prevented all of the typical spew and division that you see in our country today. And I think it's if people would just step back and look at how our combat veterans, they had all the combat veterans, to me, Jim, had more reason than anybody to be disgruntled, to be ticked off, to yell at Biden or to yell at Trump or whatever, but they didn't. Instead of getting mad, they just got to work, and they showed how, with a singular, myopic, laser focused purpose, Americans can come together and get something done. And I hope that the country will pick up on that. And I hope that leaders will pick up on that and start asking themselves, what's my Pineapple Express? What is it that I'm building that's bigger than me, that I could rally people around and create something beautiful in the face of a struggle or a catastrophe?
Well, on behalf of everybody that's listening, I just want to thank you for what you did. I mean, you're basically, in retirement and being called back to help. And, when nobody else was there to help, it sure is appreciated. I have, so much passion for the people that have served this country. And it seems unfathomable that we would have left some of our partners behind, as well as some of our own citizens. It just makes no sense to me. And the fact that you were able to step up and organize this and help the people that you did, I just pray to God that the people that are still behind, that many of them can still be rescued, if not all, which it just sounds like a bleak situation over there.
It is, Jim. It is bleak, and it's not going to end the way we want it to end, but we're not giving up hope, and we're not going to give up on those partners and our African American citizens and legal permanent residents who are counting on us. They need to know that we're with them. The American people, in my assessment, this is a private sector event. Now, I'm not even kidding you. I got a text from General Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that was like, "Hey, Scott, can you come to DC and do some planning with us?" Right. And it's like, holy cow, like, what planet is this? And it's one thing after another. It continues to be a private sector effort. And we need the American people more than ever. These Afghan special operations forces, our partners, they fought with us until the very last bullet. They never gave up. And now we have an opportunity to be there for them. And I hope that we will. The last thing I'll say on this is, there's a cost to leadership. When you recognize that no one is coming and you step into the breach and you lead, there's a transaction that must be paid on that. And it doesn't seem fair, but it's just the way it is. Because the government did not exercise its institutional power, its instruments of power. What had to happen was veterans had to exercise what little power they had left. Now, remember, these are men and women who have been through severe trauma. They've got survivor's guilt. They've held brothers and sisters in their final moments on the battlefield, and they've spent years, including myself, trying to put this behind them. And in one fell swoop, that bandage was ripped off the chest and exposed. And now these men and women have been on a 75-day 911 call with no relief, no shift, no second shift. Many of them have cashed in their 401ks. They have sent their own money over. They've quit their jobs. And, if they hang up that phone, there is no other lifeline. There is no other connection. And what our leaders can't seem to understand in Washington, D.C., is that a veteran is going to honor the promise every time. They can't hang up the phone. If they hang up the phone, they'll die, because that's how we're trained, is we don't leave anyone behind. And unless we are responsibly relieved of our post, we're going to see catastrophic effects on the veteran population. And we're going to need a lot of help from the American people on that. And we're going to need a lot of help from our politicians and our military on that, to take the watch so that we can go back to our lives as veterans doing what we're supposed to be doing.
So what are if you could give top 3 ways people listening could help?
Yeah, I would say, one, believe it or not, the first thing I'm going to say is not donate. The first thing I would say is get a better appreciation with your family and those around you of military service in this modern age, what it means, because it's a small fraction of the military. And this is way beyond thank you for your service. This is a deep, visceral, bone marrow appreciation of what it takes to fight a 20-year war in Afghanistan, and why the heck we stayed there that long, and why honoring this promise now is so important. The way they can do that is watch our film, Last Out, Elegy of a Green Beret. It's at lastoutfilm.com, coming out on Veterans Day. It's free. And I think it will do so much to help people understand what this is really all about. Two is I ask that they share that link with anybody that they can. Our goal is 100,000 views on Veterans Day. And I believe if 100,000 citizens watch this film and are changed by it, we can start to change what we demand of our politicians and how we treat our veterans, how we treat the Afghan people from an informed perspective, because this film will draw you in emotionally to what's going on. And then finally, I would say, if you could donate to the Heroesjourney.org. I think you all have the link, but it's the Heroes Journey, HEROES journey.org. We are going to be doing significant trauma intervention with our warriors from the Afghan side and the US side for quite some time. And we use storytelling and narrative to do that. And donations would help with that a lot, because it's going to be a long road coming out of this one.
Well, this has been awesome, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us. And I know you were just kind of getting in your groove with doing, the speaking and all the things that you're doing, and all of a sudden to be called into this and answering that phone and taking it on with a vengeance. I mean, it's just awesome what you've done, and I sure hope we can help you in a great way, getting the word out about the movie, as well as spreading the word. And hopefully, I've always said many hands make light work. So it's not any donation is too small. Every donation is appreciated. And I wish you much success in the future with your mission.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And so lastoutfilm.com. And again, I do believe we may be at the edge of a community-based movement right now that rivals the early 1900s, when the country really went through a big upswing, and the Shriners Club and the Rotary Club and the NAACP and Alcoholics Anonymous were formed by people just like the people on your call. And I think Pineapple is the first shot across the bow. And I hope that people will look in their own arena and say, what's the Pineapple Express that I'm building? Because nobody's coming.
All right. Well, this has been great, and I look forward to having you on again real soon to check in with your progress.
Thank you, Jim.
All right. I think that flowed really well. And I'm looking forward to promoting this. One thing I was thinking about, it's not in our cycle, but I'm gonna try, because this is gonna be something that's gonna go on for a long time, right?
Yeah.
I'm a trustee on a foundation, and I'm going to see what I need to do to get a grant request in for you. And we have a cycle. I'm on the board, and I get a small little grant, that I do for serving on the board. But I want to see if we can't, get this supported in a bigger way, at least possibly, make some. Get it out to our whole organization. So the foundation I'm on is the MDRT Foundation, and we're a member based in the Financial Services Organization. I know there's 10,000 roughly US members, and we got close to 100,000 members worldwide. So I'm going to make a call today when I get off the phone with you and see if there's a way to get some consideration sooner rather than later.
That's wonderful, Jim. Thank you so much. That would be very, very appreciated, my friend.
Yeah. All right. And I'll have my staff email those dates out if you happen to be around. I know my daughter mentioned that you needed to, you were going to be flying out November 1st, and I'm going to be there after the 1st, it looks like. But if there's a way we can connect while I'm in town, I'd love to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I think I am flying out that day, but we'll confirm.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks again, Scott.
Thank you so much, Jim. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.